Hello, everyone. This is Sanaa Green, and I am so glad to be here. This is the first Instagram Live I've done in a little while. I have a special guest joining me, and she's going to be talking to us about a workshop she's doing on divorce. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I also wanted to let you know that I am revamping my website, and and the website is actually going to include some things that I'm offering. I'm now doing Spirit Within coaching and taking some of the techniques that I've learned for myself with sensual movement and sound and nature, and I'll be sharing it. So I'm actually working with a couple of ladies who are helping me to try out some techniques. So if you're interested in being a part of this beta test and getting some coaching for a really reduced price, send me an email at centerherpower.com. I'm sorry, that's the website. You can go to the website and register there and send me a message there. Also, while you're at the website, be sure you sign up for the free class that I'll be offering on May 1st. This is a really exciting course, or introduction to a course that I'm offering called Belly Dance for Earth and Soul Dance of the Priestess. I really feel like belly dance is a dance that I did as a priestess in some time, and it feels like a way for me to connect to my divine feminine self, and I would love to be able to share that with others. So be sure you register for the free class. Even if you don't want to sign up for the course, that's okay. I'm not even sure what date the course is going to start yet, so I'm just kind of doing the class, and I'll be deciding when the course is going to start. The other thing is I'm doing a couple of free belly dance classes in Detroit. One is going to be for the summer solstice and another for the fall equinox. So stay tuned for those dates. It's going to be in a beautiful natural location. It's going to be so amazing, and I look forward to sharing with you. My guest is coming. Let's see. All right. Let me see. How do I'm going to send my guest an invitation so she can join us. All right. All right, so there she is.
Hi,
Hi, Hetheru. How are you, my friend?
I am awesome. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just you sound a little bit like you're in the distance a little bit, but
Okay.
because we want to get all those words. You always have words of wisdom to share, so we want to make sure we get them. How's your day going so far?
Oh, it's been an amazing day. I had a good training today with the organization, very receptive and open to looking at things, from a new lens. Really excited about that.
What
Just
type
lots
of
of
workshop
things.
was it?
It was it's called Refining Your Team Culture. So it's around team building, but around the personalities that exist on a team.
Wow, that's wonderful, and that's a training that you taught, you led.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you do trainings for organizations, and in
Yeah.
addition to coaching people, individuals.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I know I met you when you were working at an organization, and you coached me around my spiritually focused business. And
Yes,
so, yeah, and really, and I just love the way you included the spirituality with the business. And so, in this course that I'm doing right now with Abiola Abrams, called Spiritpreneur Visibility Lab, is
mhm.
similar to that, because it really speaks about how there are some of us who feel called, coaches, um, artists, we feel called to do something, um, some type of ministry in the world. And
Yeah,
it's important to
yes.
be able to include who you are as a spirit. But you're a consummate businesswoman as well as a very spiritual person.
Well, thank you. I do my best.
I'm sure. So I saw a flyer about a course that you're offering related to divorce, and I was like, wow, this is something that so many people can benefit from.
Yes,
Because,
absolutely.
I've never been married, um, not legally anyway. But, my parents were divorced. And I
Oh,
think that many people in the United States have experienced divorce in some shape, some way. Even if you didn't experience it personally from your personal relationship, maybe your parents experienced it, or maybe you have a sibling who experienced it, or a friend. Divorce is really, unfortunately, very common in our culture.
yes, absolutely.
So how did you decide that you wanted to offer a course at this time about divorce?
So, one of the main reasons is that in the
Hmm.
spring has the same effect of renewal and mating as it does for nature, as it does within our nature. So in the human nature, our spring prompts some of those same thoughts, even if it's subconscious. We're wondering why we're so interested in relationships in this spring. We're wondering why that attraction is so feels so overwhelming. And so I thought this was a really good time to make sure that those seeds are planted so that those who really have been through a divorce or have been having difficulty making the separation, whether that's recent or timely. So it could be that this has been happening, or you've been struggling with the separation for 20 years to love again. If you want to marry again, that opportunity is here for you. But you have to be able to really manage and navigate the waters so that those floodgates can open again, and that the brokenness that you may have experienced as a result of divorce has been repaired.
Wow, wow. So tell me, what qualifies you to teach a course like this?
Well, so I would say my experience, the wisdom and experience that I have some additional training too in relationships and relationship trauma. But the experience of being married and divorced twice, and now married again for a third time, I think I have some pretty good tools that have been developed over time. So I see myself as a good resource for that.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. So you
Mhm.
don't have just book knowledge, you have actual experience in the situation.
Yes,
And
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 also
not
training.
just experience, but you've actually overcome. I remember when I did a class with you a few years ago, you were talking about relationships. At that time you had not married again.
Mhm.
And I was really impressed by your willingness to share in a class, even though it was something that I think you were still working through.
Yes.
Yeah, would you say that that's true?
Oh, yes. I mean, it is part of the journey. It's part of the self exploration, and that's why I wanted to be able to share those tools that have been developed over time, that have proven to work. Some of the insights and downloads that I had about what worked in our relationships, what didn't work, and how we can help others navigate the same deep waters and deep wounds that divorce and those types of breakups and that traumatic relationship trauma life. You and it's
Yes, and
also.
so,
Hmm.
oh no, I'm sorry. Your husband, I think, is here, Calvin Mann, and he's saying he's adding to the conversation by saying it's divorce repair, being repaired from divorce.
Mm,
Yeah. Now, is are you teaching the class
yeah.
solo?
Oh, this particular class coming up this week, yes, we have a class that we do together
Mm-hmm.
around relationships and how to maintain relationships.
Mm-hmm. 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 I'm sorry. I just wanted to include what Calvin was
The
offering and see
witness.
whatever comments we had. We have a few people who have joined us. So, how do you think that unhealed emotions related to divorce is showing up in a couple of different, how do you think it's showing up in people's lives? What have you seen?
Well, one is that one of the kind of the first things that happen is it's also the same, some of the similar stages of grief. The first stage is just initial shock.
Mm-hmm.
Shock and shame kind of go hand in hand. So it's the initial shock that you have come to this point where you are declaring that either he's declaring it or you're declaring it together, that this is the end of a marriage relationship, not just a dating relationship, not just a courting relationship, but a marriage relationship to which you had commitments, to which you made took vows, to which you
Vows.
stood before witnesses. All of that perspective kind of offers that shock and shame at the same time. Then the
Mm-hmm.
next stage really becomes anger. And so in anger, you tend to lash out, not just at that person, you're in a relationship, you tend to lash out to other people and in other ways that are more intimate and physical, because your mindset is that somebody has to pay for the pain and suffering. Somebody has to pay or fill in for that gap that you're missing with, especially that physical contact,
Mm-hmm.
which we now know is called a spiritual tear.
A spiritual tear. So now, are you going to be incorporating some spiritual concepts in the course?
Absolutely. When you speak of covenant, it automatically makes it a spiritual context. And
Mm-hmm.
so helping people to unravel, to decode that whole process of the covenant component. In my second divorce, when I went before the judge, they asked if you have any more questions. And I asked, why is it so difficult to get through a divorce? Why all the paperwork? Why all the fees? Why all the motions? Why
Mm-hmm.
is all of that part of the process? Why does it take so long? For some, it takes longer than others. There's a division of assets. There is a provision for how you're going, if you have children, how you're going to maintain children. There's even a provision that if you get Social Security or any other types of retirement benefits, there's a provision in that. So it's not just the property and the people, it is a significant undoing of a promise. And so that's what the judge shared with me, that when you go through the court and you're going through a divorce, you have to undo all of the promises that you made in courtship and in marriage with that person. And so this is the legal way to undo those things.
Okay. Okay. Now, yeah. And, when you think about it, everyone that we've ever had sex with, their energy is, and possibly DNA is still in our bodies, and we create these energetic connections, boards with people, and not all energetic connections are positive. So if you have
Correct.
gone
So,
from having that energetic connection to taking vows before God and before witnesses, and then it has to end, that must be really difficult. One of the things that I think that people go through in relationship to divorce is shame. Shame.
yes.
How you how do you contextualize the shame people may be feeling about getting divorced?
So I'll tell you my experiences, and then I'll talk about what I typically find with other people who I coach through this process. What happened with me, I had a big wedding. I was very vocal about how I felt about him. I felt that he was my soulmate, meaning that our lives and our connection was on purpose and
Well, now,
was
do you still feel like he's a soulmate?
I I don't feel like he is my soulmate. I feel like at the time I was much younger. I felt that the connection that I had with him was a deeper connection. And of course, it was a deeper connection for some of the experiences that we shared together. And so because I didn't know any better, I didn't know another way to express it. That is what I called it. I called him being my soulmate, because we had a deeper connection than I had
But
had with anyone else.
yeah, but I believe we have many soulmates.
Mm.
Like not just one. Sometimes when we talk about soulmate, generally is talked about as one, this one true love. But I think we
Mm.
have many soulmates, and even the relationships that didn't go well could really be soulmate relationships, and really they've come to, I really am working to maintain this, that this that the soulmate relationship may not necessarily be a positive one. Like I talked to someone, and I want you to finish your thought, but I wanted to mention this too. I talked to someone whose partner passed away, and and there was, the relationship was tumultuous sometimes. And I
Mm.
said, well, would you want to be in another relationship? Like if you all were to be incarnated again, would you want to be in a relationship with this person again?
All
Do
right.
you, do you feel like this is like the soulmate, so you have to continue to keep coming together? I mean, is that always desirable? I'm for myself, I don't think it's always desirable. That's my thing. But
Right.
so when you were very vocal about the wedding, and you talked about how you felt you had a big wedding, and
Right. So
mhm,
part of the shame for me was, and it wasn't, it was 3 years later. It was 3 years after our wedding. So it wasn't a significant amount of time. Um, that I had to face those same people who I stood before and I made these vows to, and they, showered us with gifts and with love and with, all the things that you have during the whole wedding, ceremonial process, where your families come together and you have a bridal
mhm,
shower, all the pageantry that goes along with it. And now all of that investment of not just us, but other people, um, it seems like you're supposed to return everything. It seems like you're indebted now. And so part of the shame of admitting that, well, I thought this was going to last forever, and so did the people whose intentions was that same for you at the time that they witnessed your wedding. So to be able
right,
to go back and say, okay, out, only 3 years.
mhm,
It's only been 3 years, and
mhm,
so it was some shame and embarrassment around those things. It was difficult to admit it to, the person that I was most I guess embarrassed to tell my story to was my grandmother, because my grandmother and my grandfather, of course, they had been married for years, and all of my uncles and aunts, there was nobody divorced in my family. I was the first to be divorced in my family. And so
you were the first.
I was the first to be divorced in my family. Amongst
Wow.
my siblings, amongst my uncles and my aunts, I was the first. And
Mhm,
so it was a sense of shame that way, because now I've shamed my family. Although they didn't feel that way, they didn't shame me. I'll put it that way. They didn't shame me or make me feel bad about the decision that we made about no longer being married. Of course, they wanted to know why. Well, what happened? Everybody wants to know what happened. And so that part was difficult. But when I talked to my grandmother, she surprised me, because she's very old school, very traditional, and her views about, I thought about marriage and staying together, and you stay together no matter what. That was her story, and that was her generation. And what she told me was that she said to me that, I'm glad you had the courage to want peace and happiness for yourself, and not connect yourself to somebody who you were going to be unhappy with for the
wow.
rest of your life. And I was so shocked behind that I mean, I was totally thrown back. She said, and I said, I'm shocked that you feel that way. She said, honestly, you have ups and downs in relationships. but because I didn't have the courage to. I had kids, and because just the up and downs of their relationships, um, it was just such a shock to me that she would even embrace me in that way and support and encourage me about taking a stand for my own happiness. Now, it wasn't so much that she was condoning the divorce. She was affirming me. She was affirming me. And so it helped me to work through my shame, because that, to me, she was the ultimate person to have that conversation with, where it would feel heavy, especially with none of her sons had been divorced. Or, well, I should say that, correct that. My uncle, the oldest son, he had been divorced before, but he also had marriages for, long-term marriages too. So it was very interesting to have that conversation and to overcome the shame that was attached to it. And so I did work through that. I worked through that, with some help. I couldn't do that by myself, which is why I want to make sure that those women who are going through it and have not healed in those wounds have some support. And so this is what this workshop is about. It's about that, but it's also about, it's called Surviving Divorce, Mending Broken Covenant. And so how do you now mend that covenant so that you have the opportunity to love again? You have the opportunity, if you so choose, to marry again, so that you don't repeat the same steps, you don't repeat the same difficulties. And how do you do that? What are your reasons for doing that? And what are your tools that you have? And so that's really what this workshop is about.
Wow. I think it's going to be really helpful. I have a question, Heather. I don't know if this isn't necessarily in the context of the workshop that you'll be giving, and that's going to be on Friday in Southfield, Michigan.
Yes.
All right. Talked about the necessity of standing up, accepting your call, doing the work. If you're called to help others, to learn about themselves, to grow spiritually, to have a spiritual awakening, this is the time to do it. So what do you think the spiritual healing will be for people? I mean, do you think that possibly divorce could be a reason why people may not step into their spiritual ascension, because maybe they're feeling some kind of way, a certain type of way? And how do you think it can impact our spiritual evolution that we're going through collectively?
So one of the opportunities that we have is in relationships. There's someone who's supporting you. There's someone who's encouraging you.
Well, you hope. you hope.
Exactly. That's the expectation. That is our expectation. But one of the challenges with expectations is that the other person has to have your expectation and you have to have theirs. These are conversations that we don't typically have. And so if you don't have that conversation about feeling that there's a greater calling on your life, or there's a purpose, and you want to move in that direction, because one person may be more awakened than another, they may want, no, I just need for you to be with me. I just want you to stay with me. I'm not willing to share you with the world. I'm not willing to share you with that purpose or that higher calling. So that could be a hindrance too, until you come to an understanding. And so in all things, we have to have some level of understanding, because we also make a lot of assumptions based on a lot of that are in our backstory. We assume because it happened for me or to me this way, that it had to happen to you or for you that way. And so we make a lot of assumptions about what you should do, what you shouldn't do, instead of having the conversations and getting
it's a good point. Because we only see things, through our own lens, and because we're so blinded by how we are seeing things, then we assume that somebody else is feeling the same way. I know people say, I know you are, I know you know that I did blah, 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 blah. You should know that this is,
Right.
people often, and I guess we can't really help it because we're so consumed. Like I said, we're so blinded by how we're feeling.
And conditioned. We're
Mm-hmm.
conditioned. And just as women, if you think about it, and I like to hear this conversation, my husband uses this conversation too, about the fact that girls had baby dolls, we had doll houses, we had play pots and pans and stoves and ironing boards and all the things, that were grooming us to be mothers, grooming us in that way to be wives, right? Mothers and wives, those activities, right? And so with the men, what did they have? They had the army trucks, they had the superhero action figures, they had
Guns, bows and
they
arrows.
they had those kinds of things, and they also had bikes, big wheels, and those kinds of things, so that they could get the heck out of there. So they could move around when they wanted to move, or they could leave when they wanted to leave. They had their own transportation. So if you put all of those images together without values attached to them, there's a lot of room for interpretation, for assumptions, and for misunderstandings, with an expectation that somebody also knows or feels. And 3 tools that I have to help us work through this better. One is 100 Ways to Love Her. The other is
Oh, excuse me.
25
Mm-hmm.
Ways to Love Him. And then the third book is The Survey. These are the questions, important questions, that we should be asking one another when we start dating. We're asking about, how about let's go on this trip and let's do these fun things. If you're building a relationship, yes, it should be fun, but you should also be intentional about building relationships. You need to know how far you can go with someone. So you need to know what those boundaries and those expectations are, and if those expectations are shared, and if they're genuine and authentic. Because you could have somebody that could tell you, promise you the world, and never feel the same way that you do. They totally feel different. They're just trying to get through a moment, or they're trying to become who you want, or the image that you want them to be. So that's another important piece that we're able to discern as we're going through the courting, dating process.
Okay. So that sounds. It's only going to be 2 hours, but there's going to be a lot covered in that 2 hour time period. So, all right, give
Yeah.
us all the specifics about how to register, where the workshop will be, and so if people want to connect with you and get into this workshop, how can they do that?
Okay, so the first way that you can connect to the workshop is you can go to the website, which is yourinspiredjourney.com. That's www.yourinspiredjourney.com. On the opening page, if you scroll down, is the actual flyer. And there's a button where you can click that will take you to the list of workshops that are being offered currently. And you click on the button and you can register. So this particular class is $99. One-time fee, is a small group, but especially for my workshops, these intimate workshops, I really have them where they're meeting people on in this particular class. So only 10 people, this one-time workshop, at least for this season, for people who are really struggling. So I know there are a lot of women who are struggling with this, the issue of divorce and the scarring that is left and the wounds that is left on them. So we need to make sure that they have some tools, because we want to love again. We want to be married. We want to have that kind of intimacy. But if your covenant is broken, it's not going to be repaired by putting another covenant on top of it. That's not a repair process. So we need to make sure that we're not just surviving, but thriving. And when we are thriving, that means that we're healing. And so we heal in those spaces. So that's what we're looking to do. It's Friday, April the 22nd. It's from 6:30 to 8:30. It will be held at the Beecher Group at 26211 Central Park Boulevard in Southfield, and Suite 116. So it's an intimate space, very safe space. for people to express, for people to go through this process and get the tools that you need so that you can become this next level person instead of this deeply wounded person. And so how do we do that better? And understanding some of the dynamics that are happening, because there's some very interesting triggers that happen when you go through a divorce. There's a cycle that women go through in particular, and we can set ourselves up for another cycle of spiritual tears, because at that point you often feel rejected when you've gone through a divorce. So now you're on a mission to get enough attention so that you don't feel rejected. And a lot of us put that image on social media to show that we're available and we're open, and it may have the wrong connotation. We say, okay, I just been, my divorce is just completed, and to the people who are looking at you, for the men who are looking at you, it sends sometimes and oftentimes it sends the wrong message, and it sets you up for another cycle of disappointments. And so we want to make sure that we are retooling to be able to avoid a lot of the extra drama and trauma that you don't need to have in your life.
Wow. Well, Hetheru, thank you so much for joining me here at Center Her Power Podcast. And I believe I'm going to share this on my podcast as well.
Awesome.
So even if people, it may not be up until next week though, but people can still stay in touch with you, because this is a workshop that you offer periodically, right?
Yes,
You
I
may
have a
do it
number of
again,
workshops.
depending on,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
say again.
I said I have a number of workshops. If you go to the website, you'll see all the different the workshops that are available, and you can get one-on-one coaching. If you don't want to be a part of a group, you can always reach out and get one-on-one sessions, and we'll work through that in a private setting so that you can still make the strides that you need to, especially in this springtime, the time of renewal and planting new seeds of opportunity. So it's a great time to start this journey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Hetheru. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.